Hello and welcome everyone to the Why Do We Need a Google Educator Group Roundtable. I'm super excited to have this amazing panel of folks to talk about the GEGs. But I want to set a little bit of framing up front, sort of the purpose, what these are and all those kinds of things. So this is a part of Project Roundtable, which is a series of 26 hangouts throughout the year of 2014. This is number 12, so we're almost halfway there throughout the year. And this one it has the purpose of thinking about all the possibilities of what a GEG might look like, how teachers and leaders could become a part of one in order to improve their practice. If you are a teacher or a leader who's interested in knowing more about the Google Educator Groups and defining what best practice might be for these groups, I'm super excited to have you. A couple of logistical things. You can ask questions in the Q&A app that is within the Google Plus as you are watching this, but you can also take notes and do a lot of different things directly within our collaborative notes document, which is linked within the Q&A. It's just j.mp/geg roundtable. Before we get started too far in, I want to do a little bit of introductions, understand where you're coming from and what you're thinking about. So I'm going to just briefly, I'd love for everybody to introduce themselves, talk about what it is that they do in the world, whether that's daytime or what you do sort of in your free time in the world of Google. And then I'd love to hear what it is that most excites you about Google Educator Groups and sort of the work that you have started even before the GEGs were in existence, as you were thinking about connecting teachers and leaders together to think about these things. So I am going to start with Eric. I know you will be leaving us a little bit early, but who are you, what do you do, and what are you most excited within this work?
Well, thanks, Ben. Yeah, I do have to cut out halfway through. I'm leading a Google Boot Camp this week, and this is my lunch break, so I'm going to squeeze this in real quick in between stuff, so thank you. My name's Eric Kurtz. I'm from Northeast Ohio. I am a technology integration specialist for several counties up here in Northeast Ohio, and so I provide tech integration support, a lot of Google Apps support, but online learning support, other things as well, a lot of tech integration stuff, to over 30 different school districts in the Stark Portage area up here in Northeast Ohio. Prior to that, I've been a tech coordinator, tech integrationist, math teacher, lots of things. This is my 23rd year going into for education. I am a Google certified teacher. I'm a Google education trainer. And for many years I've run a website called appsusergroup.org, which really, it kind of fits the whole spirit of this. The idea was many years ago here in Ohio, we realized there's no easy way for folks to connect together necessarily. And this was 4 or 5 years back, and decided to go ahead and put this website together called appsusergroup.org so that we could share ideas and connect and help each other and stuff. So I've been trying to do that for many years, but I'm really excited with the Google Educator Groups for that reason, that it's going to give us another opportunity to connect people, because what we see a lot of times is we'll run a PD session, we'll do training, and then that's it. It's over. We all go our separate ways. And we're always saying, how do you extend the learning? How do you keep this going? And I think that's exactly what we need, is groups that can connect. And a lot of times we do connect with people all over the world, like you guys. I mean, I've known you guys for years, but we're all on different coasts. We're all over the place. There's something to be said also for connecting with people that are geographically close to you, so that we can get together and meet every now and then. And we can extend that learning and follow up and say, so what'd you do with it? And what's happened since then? So that's what I'm really excited about, is the practical, personal element of this, and being able to work with great people around my area and extend the learning of what we've been doing.
Yeah, and I think that's actually really important to call out, the idea that this work is more about what happens over time rather than at a particular event, and thinking about what is the connection between the events. What are you doing as an individual teacher or leader to connect with other teachers and leaders? How are you making this learning sort of real for you in your own practice? So I'm going to come over to Aida, and I really hope that I got that right. You can tell me if I didn't. But who are you? What are you doing in the world? And how do you get excited about this? Why are you so excited about it?
Okay, so my name is Aida Awad, and I've been a Google Education trainer since the very first group, and I think a couple of us on this call today were in that very first group in August of 2010 that went out to Mountain View and got to work with the Googlers out there at the very beginning in the rollout of the program. So really excited about going into my 4th year as a Google Education trainer. I can't believe it's been that long in some ways, and in other ways, wow, have we ever come a long way since then. So one of the things I was reflecting back on as I was thinking about where we've been and what we've been doing is it used to be fun to find another school district in our area that was also a Google Apps for Ed school. There weren't many of them back 4 or 5 years ago, but there were a couple, and the conversations that we had were really good conversations. You know, what are you doing with it? What's happening in your classrooms? What platforms are you using? And the evolution of those conversations now through, hey, we just got Chromebooks. What do we do with them? Hey, we're seeing Classroom now. We're all excited about that. So I think it's great to see the evolution of the integration of all of the tools and to see teachers developing their skills and their best practices so that they can engage and motivate their students. So during the school year time, my real job is a science department chair at a high school called Maine East High School, which is not in Maine. It's in suburban Chicago, Maine Township, but we're in suburban Chicago. In addition to that, I also run our iTech program at our school along with another Google Education trainer, Mike Canizzo. So we're pretty involved in that. We're in our 2nd year of one-to-one with Chromebooks and still training up our teachers, a couple hundred of them in our school, and then across our other 2 high schools. During the summers, I spend a lot of time out on the road, as the rest of you guys do. Just came from working with a great group down in Smithton, Illinois earlier this week. 33 teachers and office staff who were brand new to Google Apps and are now feeling like they're really empowered and ready to roll and excited about what they were able to make in a couple of days and where they're going to go this summer. So over the summers, continue to work with teacher groups like that, and then working with those who are interested in being Google Education trainers. Every summer I run a couple of camps for, anywhere from 15 to 30 of those people who are going to be future colleagues of ours as trainers. So excited about that. The GEGs, this is a really interesting experience for a lot of us. I know the Chicago area group has grown very large, and there are
let's get it right. It's Chicagoland, right? It's Chicagoland.
You're right, Chicagoland. There are about 10 of us, I think, now technically leading that group. But then I've also seen a lot of people asking questions about, hey, how do we start a group in this state or this country or that country? And it seems like these groups are just popping up all over the maps like afternoon thunderstorms in the summer, you know? Here they come. So I spend a lot of my time in the summers and school breaks down in South Florida, so I am in the process of trying to get a group going here in Florida as well. So we'll see how that goes, and I'm just really hoping to talk to and learn from a lot of us about how do you get a group really going and up and active, and what are the kinds of events and conversations that we can get moving.
And I think there are 2 really important things there. One is the idea that there are like 7 or 10 people leading a group within the Chicagoland, and that it's not like one person that is doing it or even just a couple of people. That it seems very much almost like a democratic, like, hey, we want to do this thing, let's do it together. And so there is some aspect of that I find most intriguing about these types of groups. I also find the idea of empowerment, which you spoke about, really, really important, and the idea that the tools that we are talking about are not tools for necessarily just in the classroom, but are empowering to teachers to teach differently, or really looking at the ways in which we can empower teachers and they can empower themselves. To me, that's pretty powerful. Sean, I'm going to come to you. What are you doing, and what are you excited about?
I'm excited about a couple of things. My name's Sean Williams. I'm actually taking Eric and I are trading paths here because now I work with a single district finally. I'm the innovation strategist for Riverdale School District just outside Portland, which is kind of fun. It's a new challenge for me because I'm doing the instructional technology as well as traditional IT, kind of folded into one position. So learning lots of challenges, but it's all good. Google certified trainer, or teacher at Google education trainer, blah, yada, whatever. Doing all that stuff.
All of those things. Yeah, I feel like at some point you're just like, well, how many different acronyms can I put at the end of my name and have it still make sense?
Yeah, whatever. I do it like everyone else here. I do a lot of training. I just got back I was in California yesterday. I had a really fun training working with the IT staff for this district, helping them understand the dashboard and Google Apps for Education and why teachers want the tools they want in the classroom. So that, as well as doing the classroom workshops everywhere, keeps me busy and keeps me fresh, which is fun. One of the things I'm excited about is what you just touched on, is the idea of these groups popping up everywhere, and being able to facilitate that and help them pop up everywhere. We had a video conference about a year ago with this whole idea, and so actually less than a year ago, the idea was to only have a couple of like GEGs spread out in strategic areas, and but then in the last couple of months it was just too much because there was this explosive growth. Everyone wanted to be a part of it, everyone wanted to do it, and so it's been pretty great to just watch them pop up everywhere. And yeah, it's exciting. It's really exciting. Our GEG here in Oregon is just exploding in the last couple of weeks, and we have a couple of events coming up, and it's another opportunity to share and connect with educators here in the region, and another platform for communicating what's going on and connecting with people. So it's pretty great.
There are two things that I want to ask questions about, and I'm sure that we'll have time here. One is, why does everyone want to become a part of it? Is it just because Google is at the beginning of this? Like, why is that important and valuable? And then two, you said that it's another platform to connect. And I think sort of my big question is, do we need another platform to connect? Or are we, inundating ourselves with too many platforms? Are we diluting, like, some of the groups that we have already set up? And so I get excited about it, and I'm really interested in why it is that we need another or different, or why this one, and those kinds of things. Before we hit that, I want to come to both Alana and Jason. Jason, I'll come to you first. Let Alana have the last word there. And Jason, who are you, what are you doing, and what are you excited about?
Hello everybody, I'm Jason Everett, and I'm from Kearney, Nebraska, which is right smack dab in the middle of Nebraska, which is actually right smack dab in the middle of the United States, 1,733 miles. What's that?
You must know Aaron.
Aaron Swoboda, yes.
Yes.
From Kearney Public, yes. Very well. He works with my wife. He's a learning coach. My wife's a learning coach at the elementary level, so yep. So I get help from that side of it. I'm actually a technology trainer in the service unit area, so I also have 35 school districts that I work with and do training, boot camp, stuff like that. So I'm similar to what both Eric and you are doing, Sean, it sounded like. I'm just interested in this. I'm a part of a Google Summit planning here for Nebraska, and I'm just wondering how we can use this to maybe extend that learning throughout the year and create those communities. So I really want to extend our, this is the third year we've been having our summit, and so we have 1,500 people that have gone through it, and so I'm just excited about how this can extend that.
Nice. I like that a lot. And I do, before we move on, I do want to pay attention to Thomas's comment about, are we not soccer fans? I'm a big soccer fan. It's just a really ill-timed hangout. So if someone has the TV up, are we still at 0-0? 0-0? Come on, somebody's Googling it right now, please. All right. So I do want to make sure that we have time to do everybody's updates and things like that. Lana, are you able to join via the video and audio?
I am, yes. I was just keeping it muted till I figured out what I was doing. So.
I love it. I love it. So who are you? What are you doing? What are you excited about?
Well, I feel really weird because everybody else has like all these titles, and I really don't. I'm just a teacher, quote unquote.
Can we not do that anymore? Can we
I know,
never do that again?
I know. But listening to you guys, like, I would like to be where you guys are at some point later when I'm a grown-up. But I am an English teacher, and I'm actually in the middle of switching districts. And so I'm really at the beginning of this, where I'm just trying to learn. You know, I'm just looking into getting Google Education certified and all that stuff. So I'm just looking forward to learning and figuring this out. I'm going into, you know, coming from a Title I school where we had a pretty big influx of money, and so I've been kind of spoiled. We had Chromebooks last year and Kindles and all this stuff, and going into a situation where I don't necessarily have those things. So it'll be me learning how to make do with what I have, and then maybe hopefully convince people what we should try and get.
I love that. And to me, the idea that that somehow we're on a path that has like a set, you know, beginning and ending is probably not perfectly right, because I actually feel like if I were to, like, the people that are right now in the Google Teacher Academy Atlanta, like, I envy them in a lot of ways, because they will have started with Classroom, where none of us have been able to do that, you know, with Google Classroom. And, like, what will that look like if that's your starting set of apps? Like, if that is where you start, you know, what's possible then, you know? And I think that we, you know, tend to sort of get, oh, I've got this workflow that does this thing, and now when something else comes out, we're like, well, I still like my old thing. And
Yes.
so I want to make sure that we're continuing to expand and to sort of grow out. So I will introduce myself a little bit. My name is Ben Wilkoff. I'm Director of Personalized Professional Learning in Denver Public Schools, which really just means I get to host a lot of Hangouts, and that's pretty much, you know, the extent of it. But I really get excited about this work with, I would say, anyone who is interested in collaboration. And I always just kind of break the Google Apps down to, okay, so do you want to collaborate with people around the world? This is how you do that thing. And so that, to me, is what I'm most excited about within the Google Educator Groups, is not just that we have these localized groups, but that it's a network of groups. And it is something that I understand what it is that you might be doing. It almost feels like there is something ed campy about it, but that it is perhaps even less about an event and more about the ongoing learning. And so that's what I get really excited about. I do want to make sure that we keep on checking in. So Jackie, thank you so much for putting in. It is still 0-0. If there is a change, just put that in there and we'll notate it, make sure that everybody has that there. But so I want to come back to that question of, like, why should we care about this group versus any other type of group? We have statewide conferences. We have ISTE that's happening like tomorrow. We have all of these other groups that are doing this work. What should we be doing differently within a GEG that we can't or that we aren't currently doing in those other spaces? Well, I'm just going to throw that out there.
I think there's probably two things going on there. One of the things is the GEGs or GEGs. What are we going to call these things? Whatever.
It's got to be a GEG. I mean, come on.
But then it's going to be so easy to say I've got a gig.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody will know if my band is playing.
Once we get to 1,000 GEGs, we'll have a gig of GEGs.
Okay.
Oh, boy.
But, you know, the thing, it's very organic and ed campy, like you said. And one of the things that we've been working on for years is like you said, I think it was you said earlier, that you go to an event or you do something, you go to a workshop or whatever, and then you leave and it's kind of over. So the GEGs give an opportunity for it to be an ongoing event, like an ed camp. That's very, I don't know, I don't want to say democratic, but it's very open and flat, and you can keep those conversations going. And then going back to the platform that it is, I mean, Plus is a great platform for it because you can keep those conversations going and you can decide how often you want to check in and see what's going on, and it allows you to post more and share differently, I think, than some of the other platforms like Twitter, where you're trying to follow a hashtag or a chat or whatever, and you get these little blips. And with Plus, you can have conversations around things. And then in our GEG, I don't even know how to deal with this. In OrGEG, we have it broken into a couple different topics. So there's the generalized discussions, and then there's Chromebook discussions and OER discussions. So those conversations there's many conversations happening in the same space that different people can drop in and drop out of and keep that kind of user group support going. That's what I'm seeing.
Well, and so a couple of things there. One is the idea that this is ongoing, and two is the platform that we are choosing is more about the conversation than it perhaps has ever been, right? It is keeping the conversation going. It is going to a deeper level. I do think that obviously Twitter is not ever going to go away, at least
not.
in the...
I love Twitter for what it is, but I mean, it's a different vehicle for connections and discourse and stuff. It's mostly for checking in, maybe a quick share of resources or whatever. Whereas with Plus, you can get in there and have a conversation and have that asynchronous conversation that goes on. You know, maybe somebody posts something and I don't get it. I don't get around to checking it till tomorrow, and they don't check my comment for, until the day after or 2-3 days from now. But we can have that ongoing conversation and have other people chime in on it too, which is kind of great. Usually, a lot of times with Twitter, it's between myself and somebody else, right? Maybe 3 people that I tag, but unless you're stalking me and watching my every post, you might not catch that part of the conversation if you don't check Twitter at the right time, right?
Right, and I think there's something interesting too about you mentioned what types of things are we sharing. I think that it's interesting, like the things that we share on Twitter might be the things that are either very small snippets or that are quite frankly are just so rapid that there isn't that time, that reflection in that time. Eric, I want to know a little bit. Sorry?
I'm sorry. It's very topical on Twitter. It's what's happening right now.
Right, and so how do we move beyond that? And I think that's in a lot of ways the reasons why GEGs might become powerful, is how do we move beyond the 140 characters? What does it mean that we are having a sustained conversation with a number of people that have chosen to do this, right? Yeah. Eric, what are you thinking about your GEG in Ohio? What is that going to look like versus all of the other things that you are doing?
Well, yeah, I think the real key differentiation is I do want it to be a lot of personal connection. I do want it to be an ongoing conversation, and I do want to have multiple people involved in leading it. Now, the Ohio one just launched, so I think we went live, not much over a week ago, as far as turning on the Ohio GEG, so we're just getting going. We've got quite a few people in there. We're getting a lot of activity starting up, but I don't want it. What I don't want it to be is I don't want it to be a situation where it is just, oh, here's a rehash of the news. Here's the latest thing. Because like yesterday, I mean, good grief, Google, how many new things came out, in one day? Is that possible? Which, by the way, it was my birthday yesterday, and I think Google knew.
Oh, man.
They were giving me some presents, man.
That's
but,
it.
And on one hand, and don't get me wrong, that's good. That's a good thing to use the GEG to keep people in the loop. Okay, here's a new thing that came out. You can now do slides on your mobile. You can now, the quick office that now that's part of Google Docs and all those sort of things. That's good. That's excellent. But I want it to be more than just, here's the latest news from Google. I want it to be that conversation where people are sharing, here's what I'm doing, here's an example of a lesson that I just did, or I've got a question about this, how do we do this? But then I think we want this to extend beyond the virtual. My understanding with the GEGs is we want to have physical meetings. We need to walk outside into the sunshine, and we need to get together every now and then and actually meet with people. And that's the idea of trying to make it more localized, that instead of having, like you're saying, just a few of these around the country, if possible, we want to get these in smaller and smaller and smaller groups. And so, within one of your GEGs, you could have even subsets in there, and you want people to actually meet together and have, activities and meetups and start to have that conversation that can't happen. And again, I love Twitter, I love Google+, I love that, and I love conferences, but some of the best discussions happen between the sessions, and they happen over dinner that night when people get together, and we need people to be able to connect that way as well and have those ongoing relationships, and that's what I'd really love to see come out of this.
And so something, just to piggyback on what you were saying there, and another strength of the GEGs is that it's, even though it's, I don't want to say sponsored, but maybe supported by Google, it's not just Google. So you can have when you get together and have those face-to-face meetings, it's about teaching and learning and sharing and, developing relationships with other educators in your area. So I think that's another strength of it is, it's a Google Educator Group, but we're going to be talking about what works. And, it's not, focused solely on Google products, or we're only going to do, talk about Chromebooks or whatever. So I think that's another strength.
Yeah, and I think there are some really powerful things about the way in which Google has set this up, right? So in their purpose statement, and if you look on the Google Doc, there's a link to the background info. There is nothing about Google Apps within the purpose statement for the GEG. Eric, I also like the idea that we're getting more and more granular, the idea of a GEG within a GEG, like that we could have smaller groups that are really meeting about specific topics. I'm also really interested in this idea of, like, where is the starting point? We talked a little bit about that with Alana. Like, if we have the starting point as, I just want to get into, what redefinition in my classroom looks like within the SAMR model, let's say. Like, these are the places where you start. And I think about sort of the toolkit that we are giving to one another and sort of supporting one another with. If that toolkit starts with Google Apps or like even just the Google login, because almost everything now you can log in with the Google Apps login. If we start with that and say that is a part of the toolkit, then what are all of the tools that are possible? How are all of the different ways in which we teach and learn, how do they open up for us, right, as possibilities? So, Aida, I'd love to hear a little bit about what you're thinking about. Obviously, Chicagoland is fantastic, and I was just talking to Jenny yesterday. She was flying out from Denver. I drove her to the airport, and the ways in which we start to think about these larger communities, I think have a lot of impact on the way in which we talk about teaching and learning. So I'm intrigued as to how you are making that bridge from the tools to teaching and learning in general.
Yeah. So I actually wanted to go back to something Sean said earlier, and he said that the GEG can be. No, it's gonna tie in. So hang on, bear with me. The GEG can really kind of be a flat community, and I think that's the key here is that you go to the summits, you go to ISTE, you go to these other conferences and meetups, but what percentage of teachers who are actually in the classroom working with kids using the tools are actually able to get to those on a regular basis and be part of those conversations? So the flatness of the GEG environment ecosystem then should help us to really build on that and bring everybody into the conversation, because we all have our little areas that we love to focus on, and we have our strengths and areas where we're doing really great things. and we all need to be able to share that in a way that supports all of the education that's going on. So I think when you've got a huge community like Chicago, and all of the school districts are very into one-to-one Chromebooks, one-to-one whatever. Everybody's using Google Apps. You've got summits going every weekend almost, whether it's an actual Google Summit or a Chromebook Summit. Seriously, we're planning our first one right now, and it's just, oh my God, there's so much to do. But they're happening all the time, and the conversation that's happening around them is really almost deafening at times. But as soon as the school year starts, people get back to everything that has to happen on a daily basis. And I think this is going to give us more of an opportunity to really continue the conversations asynchronously. And that's great. And it's going to give us more networking opportunities and opportunities for people to really meet some new people, talk about some new things, get some new ideas, and continue to grow their practice and to continue to help students understand, hey, the responsibility for learning really does land on my lap, and my teachers are trying to help me through all of these great tools and opportunities and apps and extensions and whatever else we got out there to offer. But so maybe we start thinking down the road with GEGs or whatever we're calling them, and GETs and whatever we're calling ourselves nowadays. You know, how do we get some of these communities of some of our student leaders going too? And that's a place where in our school and our school districts we're really going, and I think Chromebooks kind of drove us there, that we knew we had to be able to support the devices and support the learning. So, you know, the ninja programs that people are doing with kids, the student leader programs. Hey, we've been through the tech leadership and the teacher leader programs, now we're starting into the student leader programs, and how does maybe some of that conversation come into this as well? So there, I kind of hope I addressed what you wanted to.
Oh, you definitely did. No, don't worry about that. I mean, the conversation is actually really powerful, and you're so there are a couple of points there that I think are really worth sort of blowing up into really big letters. One is, how does our empowerment of teachers and sort of the continuation of what's going on in the classroom, how does that empower students? How do we make the GEG for students and not just for teachers? And you know, I do think that you're right about some of these tools making it more about the student learning and not so much about how do we make it more productive for us, and those kinds of things as we see you know, sort of over time. So I want to hear a couple of other things as they're coming through. Alana, you are sort of, you were saying you're at the beginning of this journey, and in the doc, there's a question that was raised about how do you become a Google certified teacher, and I would actually just, and we can talk about that and, you know, what that looks like, but why would you want to? Like, why would you want to be a Google certified teacher? Why would you want to start having these acronyms and start along that process? What does that mean to you as you're looking at this as a possibility for your career?
Well, I think I look at it in a way for me to help teachers be better at what we do. Like, I'm really big. I have been a part of my instructional leadership team at my last school for the past couple of years, and you know, a lot of that centered around best practices. You know, and when you talk about, you know, 21st century learners and all that stuff, it really does center around integrating technology effectively. And so I think it's more just credibility. You know, a lot of people at, you know, obviously I'm switching schools, so it'll be a little bit different, but I'm usually a go-to person. I'm one that people know that they can ask and say, hey, I'm trying to do this, can you help me? And so it's a way for me to learn more so that I can help them better, because it's just something I like to do. And so I'm exploring it. I wish I had done it sooner. I just never really, you know, I have 2 kids and, you know, time is short sometimes, but it's just one of those things that, especially after going to an EDCO last week, it's or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was. It's one of those things where it's just kind of seems like the next step for me. And so it's something that I want to do, like I said, so I can help teachers be better and so I can be better, and, you know, just really find those tools. As an English teacher, I feel like technology is hugely important. Especially the idea of going paperless and, you know, just streamlining processes that you can, you know, if you can make your life easier as a teacher, you might as well do it. And so it's, you know, and then how can we take what we have available out there and help students be better, you know, and they're all about technology, so you might as well get with it.
You might as well get with it.
So, well, because we still have a lot, I mean, even at my last school, we had a lot of teachers who were very resistant. It's like, you know, they don't even want to use Microsoft Word, much less Google Docs. So it's just interesting to see the different people on the spectrum. So,
well, and I think that idea of resistance, you know, that's something that I think we probably need to explore. Like, how does a community-based effort, which is really what I see the GEG being all about, is how does a community-based effort decrease the resistance that we might be able to, that we might see within a classroom, within a school? You know, how does that, you know, we were talking a lot about the relationship part. How does the relationship help us to make these changes more real for people? Jason, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that or any of the other components that we've been discussing here, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts about the way in which Nebraska and all of the schools that you support, how they would see this work.
Yeah, I just see this as an extended PLN, you know, in its basic form, and not only that, but it gives focus to it too. I like the idea of breaking them down into focus areas within the GEG. You know, I'd like to investigate that a little more, see what others are doing, and then having a team of like Aaron being a part of that team, obviously, to help support as a Google certified teacher. I was talking to him the other day, and he indicated that there's only like 4 Google certified teachers in Nebraska, so being able to have all of them in one area as a resource would be very nice.
That's really interesting. And thinking about how do you actually spread that out across the entire, you know, the whole state, and thinking about location as a really interesting component. You know, we talk about online spaces all of the time. How do we make it more about those physical spaces? And I think Eric was talking about this. That is why the GEG might be powerful. And so I'd like to spend at least a little bit of time, what are all of the different ways that we can actually physically meet? Like, what are all the different types of events that we would want to have as a part of a GEG that would allow us to be different, perhaps? And there was somebody in the Google Plus page who was talking about, well, how is this different than just a traditional computer user group? And I was a part of the Greater Cleveland PC Users Group in Ohio. I started the Teen SIG, you remember special interest groups, when I was 13, and we got together and talked about computer games and all the fun things that we were doing in 7th and 8th grade. You know, and that's actually one of the reasons why I knew I was going to be a teacher, was because of that experience. But my question is, what are all the different ways that we can physically meet that help to bridge this gap, that make the relationship stronger, that allow us to come together? So go, like, brainstorm, like, what are all the different ways that we can meet?
Well, I think this is a 2-for-1 thing here, because it also in the doc there was the question of what makes the GEGs different, and I think what makes them different from what we've been doing in the past is the intentionality of we are going to have face-to-face meetups as well as this forum online to keep sharing and keep the conversation going. I know for me, we're planning a Camp Chromebook coming up, and then the follow-up support will be, instead of using, you know, Google Groups as basically a messaging service, I'm pointing everyone to the GEG, and then scheduling some follow-ups that are going to be those face-to-face meetings that are going to be at a local pub, and you know, it'll be after hours, and food and whatever you choose to drink is fine. And we're going to plan those and have those fairly regularly scheduled.
And so beer is the difference between between what we did before and
Out of
then,
all
right?
that I just said, that's all. That's the part.
That's what we got. We got beer.
So I think that's really important, though, to think about the the different ways that you're meeting. But I do think there's something about sort of pointing to a specific place, whether that's a specific place online or this is the physical space that we're going to be meeting, and just making it an open invitation. I do think one of the things that's most intriguing about the GEG is every event has to be free. Right? Like, this is something that is categorically different than a conference, potentially categorically different than a group, a user group, where you have membership fees and things like that. Everything has to be free, which that's different, right? Like, what does that do to the nature of the community when the expectation is that we are all volunteers volunteering because it is important to do? Or because we want to, those kinds of things I think are valuable. All right, what are the other ways that we can meet? And I'm not just talking about, like, could you have a beer pong GEG event or something like that? Like, what are all the different ways that you would want to meet within your GEG?
Well, I think in general, we tend to go in all sorts of. We start with small group. We have a classroom level. With our districts, we have several districts that are big enough to have multiple schools, obviously. So there's a school level, there's district level, there's our service unit level, there's state levels, and then there's national level. So in terms of all of those, I think there's a place for, depending on where you're at and your comfort level. I also help with our statewide NEDA ISTE affiliate, and we see a great need for not only statewide level, but even district level in terms of their comfort level. And so I think this could potentially be a place that they could feel that comfort no matter what level they're at.
And so finding other types of events that have different comfort levels, I think could be really valuable. Absolutely. Aida, what kind of events are you guys looking at?
So we've already actually had a couple of meetups, and they have been involving beer, I will admit to that. And they've been at this place called Toby Keith's right outside of, right next to O'Hare almost. So it's a good central location for people to come. It's been a weekend afternoon, and it's just been a great opportunity to network and get to see people and talk to people about what's new and what they're doing and what they're finding success with. But it's also really nice because people are bringing others with them that wouldn't normally be involved in the conversation. They wouldn't be people who would be invited to go to a summit. They wouldn't be people whose districts are going to pay for them to go to ISTE. They're not necessarily in that community. So it's opening the community up to new people. I'm excited to see what other kinds of meetups we come up with, and I don't know where we're going to go next. Is it going to be something around, maybe we'll have a soccer game, I don't know. But there certainly are a lot of opportunities for us to lead the way in what these kinds of meetups are going to look like and what the outcomes from them will be. So it's more open and it's more creative, I think, at this point, than other things like, oh, we're going to a summit, we know how that's going to go, we know what the format will be. So different kinds of opportunities, which may lead to some more creativity, which is always good.
Absolutely. So if you're thinking about other spaces, I'm interested in what a GEG outside might look like. Yeah. I'm interested in what a GEG, I would say in a really informal meeting space. So there are a lot of co-working spaces or maker spaces, hacker spaces that are around Denver and a lot of places, right? What does a GEG look like there? How do we make these conversations that are online, how do we also make those, bring them together into the physical space? So I did just invite Lisa, and it looks like she's getting her her audio and video figured out. But Alana, what are you thinking about in terms of your, what kind of events would you want?
I think the key is, especially where I'm at and just thinking about you know, the school structure and stuff. I think the key is it has to be comfortable. It has to be small enough to where it doesn't feel like the district tech people talking at us. You know, it has to be that truly shared vision part of it. I think is really going to be important, because otherwise it's very intimidating. Like, I feel like I know a decent amount about technology, but when you get into a situation like this, it's very intimidating. And if you have teachers who are, you know, maybe at the lower end of the spectrum, it's very overwhelming for them. And so I think the key is you have to build that comfort level so that people feel comfortable enough to go into it ready to learn, ready to contribute, ready to do all these things. And so for me, it's not so much the space, although obviously that is important. It's more building that comfort zone so that you know that you might have people who are way ahead of you on the spectrum, but you're all there to help and learn and work towards the same goal, and it's not just one person, okay, this is what it's like. You know, I think it's really important for other teachers to get that feeling so that then they can become more productive and more supportive of the ideas behind the group. And so I feel like that's really more important than the space and all that, although the beer is good. But I think that you also have to establish those things so that you get those people who are at the lower end of the spectrum, and so that you can get them to see how it might benefit their students, and then you can kind of build on that.
Okay, there are two things that are really important there. One is this idea of we lack entry points for beginners to get started. We really, especially with things like ed camps, like we say they're for everybody, but it's really the nerds that show up, right?
Exactly.
Like we say that conferences are for everybody, but it's really, you know, the people who are already in work that tend to show up. So having something that lowers the barrier to entry is huge. So if that's something that we can do, great. But I also think you're building on something that Aida was talking about with the idea that we're actually these events and these conversations are massive and they're ongoing and they're always.
Yes.
And being the filter for the, you know, the things that are happening every single day and everything like that, like, could we be the filter for people to be able to have a space to come together? Almost like, well, maybe GEGs could be nothing more than like what a book club used to be, where you would get together and just talk about it, right? So I like that idea of small, informal. So Lisa, thank you so much for joining us. I saw you in the doc, and I always am intrigued by, you know, by a different perspective. And I think you're the director of digital literacy in the New York City Department of Ed. And so, how would you see the Google Educator Group as something that you might leverage, or something you might want to be a part of?
So can you hear me?
Yeah, you're great.
Okay, great. I haven't used this computer for a Hangout before, so I wasn't sure. We are actually creating a GEG for the New York State Department of Education. So for us, it's really powerful just because Google specific, there are New York City Department of Education things around Google that are specific to the NYC DOE. So it'll be a great way for us to share those NYC DOE specific items. And it's also, like many people were saying already, a terrific way for us to get together face-to-face. And something that this allows us to do is all over, we're the largest school district in the U.S., and we know that we have a lot of educators who are Google educators or Google certified trainers, as well as many other trainers and, you know, smart trainers and Edmodo certified trainers and things like that. But there's never been a way for us to identify those people and bring them together in ongoing conversations. So for us, this is going to be extremely powerful to bring the people together face to face that are passionate about certain technologies. So that's a terrific benefit that I see of it. And the GEG that we're starting was just created yesterday, and we're going to be launching a program on, I think it's July 9th.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
You know, and to me, it's like, okay, so these things are already happening, right? The innovation is happening. These people already exist. How do we come together? How do we have something that allows us to come together, both formally, informally, and I think the broader point of how do you identify innovation that is happening already in your school? How do you identify the things that are working and then disseminate them? How do you let this naturally spread? And I think the idea of a GEG is to have things naturally spread and continue to expand out. So we're at sort of 10 minutes till. I want to allow everyone, because this is what I do on every roundtable. We are now connected together in some way, shape, or form, and we have the ability to challenge one another with something. We are, this is probably the only time that all of us will be together in one point, whether it's in the Google Doc or within the conversation here on the Hangout. So what should we do with this power, this community that we are starting? What should we challenge each other with? And I guess that's really the question, right? Like, what would you want to challenge us to do, to be, to sort of see, and to create as we continue this work? Jason, I'm going to start with you. What would you challenge us to do?
Oh, yikes. How about, I would say the challenge would be to stay connected and to be able to bounce ideas off of each other. Not knowing enough about it and being involved enough with it yet. That's my challenge, is to stay more involved and be more of a part of it. So there's a personal challenge, but yet for the greater group, I don't know what that is.
I think that challenge of stay connected is actually really important. Yep. Sean was talking about that earlier. The idea of, in our Google Plus communities and things like that, if you receive a notification, that you respond to it, right? That if you are engaged in a conversation, that you don't let it go, that you actually continue to deepen the conversation. I think we have the power to ask each other really good questions at the very least. And Jason, I do appreciate your in the chat that it is still 0-0, right? Like, that's still a thing that's happening. So I haven't missed anything by doing this Hangout, which is great. So hopefully that works. So Aida, what would you challenge us with?
Yeah, I was actually looking at one of the questions that was posted up on this notes document, and it says, how does the community-based group help decrease the resistance we get from some teachers? So what my challenge to all of us is going to be is, how do we, and I'm going to back up for a second and think about it from things I hear from kids in classes all the time, and it's, wow, there's 1 or 2 classes where I'm using this tool, but I have a bunch of other teachers who, when I go into their classroom, they say, get out your book and put your technology away, turn the screens off. So my challenge is, how do we as a community support each other in opening conversations with those teachers that are, for whatever reason, resistant to helping open up everything there is in the world of education to their students through integration of technology? So that's my big challenge, is we got to support each other in opening conversations with those teachers that may be teaching right next to us that we know aren't using technology to help their kids engage and look at things in a different way. So there's my challenge.
It does, and I think your idea that we should support one another, that is the challenge. Like, it is not only to stay connected, but to support one another over time and to make that real for one another. So Lisa, your thoughts around, like, what's the challenge that you would like to see for all of us and for the people who are in the doc?
I think what would be helpful, as this is brand new, is to start like a best practices document where we're all sharing best practices and maybe challenges and how to resolve those.
I love that idea. And are you a member of the GEG leader community already within Google Plus? Because I think that's a good place to start the document.
No, I'm not. So I'll join that now.
Yeah, join that one. But the idea that you could actually that you could have a document that lives and breathes, right? As we continue to expand what the events look like, what our communities look like, that we would have this ongoing document. And not only that, I mean, obviously the 6-7 of us that have taken part on this Hangout are all North America specific and even US centric, but that the GEGs are an international phenomenon. How do we make this work across all types of communities, across all of the nations? Alana, what would you challenge us with?
Well, everybody took all the good ones, so I don't. I think I don't know. You got to remember, I'm the newbie here, so maybe find somebody that is, maybe not at your level and kind of help pull them into this as well. I think, my personal challenge is just going to be not to get intimidated and to, find ways that I can get involved, to my comfort level, and then kind of progress from there, but maybe find, a teacher who isn't as comfortable, and if nothing else, chat with them, and how can you make them more comfortable, because that's kind of what it's about. And, like you said earlier, it seems to be this thing where it's already people who are interested in technology that join these things, so how do you get the people who maybe are a little bit more reluctant or nervous or whatever, how can you find ways to help them get involved as well? Because it seems like if you can truly bring it down to a smaller level, it's a great way to get people involved and get people talking with one another, because that's really what it comes down to.
So that is brilliant. The idea of a personal invitation to joining, or to say, just come down to the bar with me on Friday. We're going to have this thing. Right? Like, that to me is actually really powerful. And that's something that a number of folks in Colorado have started doing. And I actually think that it probably is happening everywhere, but, being in Colorado, like, it makes sense that it's happening here. And how do we make these kinds of settings the norm? This is how we collaborate. This is how we teach and learn now. So thank you so much for taking part in this conversation. I do want to get to a couple of the things that were in the Q&A here. Our collaborative notes, they will last forever, so you can always get to them, j.mp/GEG Roundtable, and I'm glad, Lisa, that you were able to get in, even though the short links are this alien phenomenon in the DOE. So that's good. I also want to let you know about if you would like to have receive credit for this Hangout. There is a badge on Peer-to-Peer University that you can apply for. Just do a reflection and post it in there, and you can go back to the other 11 roundtables and do all of those if you would like to. They're all recorded and are available to you. And if you do, I think 7 of them, you can actually get graduate credit as well. And the links are all there. Like, this is the hashtag will die out because it's kind of a temporary existence, but the idea of the GEG will not. And so I actually think that the GEG hashtag, and if you want to call it something different as you're saying it, that's fine. But the GEG, that to me is an ongoing conversation that we want to keep having. The other piece is there are GEGs throughout. They are on the map on that site within the document, but you can also find out about them just by searching Google Plus for GEG. And then they come up and you'll see them. We are getting our Colorado GEG off of the ground right now. If you are interested, there is a link. It's bit.ly/GEG interest. You can fill that out. We've got almost 200 people that are interested in the GEG, so I'm super excited about that. And we'll get that up and running. And then the last couple of things, I just want people to have access to this. Thomas is very interested in the factory reconditioned Chromebooks, and he put in a link to that, which I'm kind of excited about as well. So thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a lot of fun to talk about what the GEGs are going to be like, and I will talk to you all very soon.
Thanks, Ben.
Bye-bye.
Hi.